Family station tonight? No. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the work session, Binghamton City Council, 6 p.m., 24th of July, 2023. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and for all.
Justice for all.
Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rossetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilmember Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns,
Present.
Councilman Strawn is absent. Councilman Scanlon
Present.
and President Scringy.
Present.
That's 5 here, 2 absent, Rossetti and Strawn.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Want to thank all of our guests tonight, including Dr. Hawkins, President Hawkins, I should say, as well as Dr. Hawkins, Napa, and all of our department heads. I appreciate all of you who are here. Wanted to take this opportunity to take some time at the beginning of our meeting this evening. I'd like to introduce to everyone the 8th president of the SUNY Broome, a very important stakeholder in our community. Dr. Hawkins is the new president of SUNY Broome, and he was kind enough to reach out to us and to spend some time maybe answering some questions, introduce himself again as the new president of the college. And so, Dr. Hawkins, please, we're honored to have you here and welcome you to spend some time with us this evening. Dr. Hawkins, forgive me, there's a button in front of if there's a little green light on, that means the microphone is on. And the microphone is really good, but you just have to speak up very close to it so we can hear you. But again, Dr. Hawkins, really appreciate you again, 8th president of SUNY Broome. Dr. Hawkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation and this opportunity to not only address the City Council of Binghamton, but also the opportunity to serve the faculty, staff, and students of SUNY Broome. This begins my 3rd week as the 8th president of SUNY Broome Community College. It's been an exciting 3 weeks. I hope to be invited back often to tell you about the great work that we're doing. Right now, we are basically getting through the summer. Our faculty are away for the summer. We are busy registering students for the start of the fall semester. A little bit about myself. I have been in higher education for the last 32 years, mostly at community colleges, many of those years in the state of Maryland. I began as a faculty member in the speech and theater department at Prince George's Community College. Then I went on to New York University to earn a PhD, and then returned back to the state of Maryland for 11 years as an instructional dean, and the last 8 years as a provost and executive vice president of academic affairs, continuing education, and workforce development at Frederick Community College. I'm very excited to be here. I have learned every day more and more reason to be excited about my new position and what makes Broome County and Binghamton specifically a wonderful place to be. If you follow SUNY Broome on Facebook, you may have seen pictures of me having a speedy, actually participating in the Rumble Ponies baseball game, and the most wonderful fireworks celebration after a game that had been rained out. So it was kind of wonderful. Being from Washington, I'm used to really nice fireworks, but I think the best fireworks I've ever seen were following that game at the Rumble Ponies. I have been I've had Humdinger's ice cream and ridden on a carousel. So lots of things that they've got me busy doing. And I couldn't be more excited to assume the leadership of this very fine institution. Like I said, I would be more than excited to come back after 20 more days and update you on the good work that we've started to do. But thank you very much for the invitation, and I would be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, President Hawkins. I appreciate it. So I'm gonna, in respect to my colleagues, I'm gonna ask the first most important question. Was it a chicken, steak, or lamb speedy?
It was a lamb speedy.
Excellent. There you
But
go. That's
I'm going to decline to give an idea or give a vote on what place serves the best speedies. I understand that is a hot button.
President
Not gonna do
Hawkins,
it.
with all due respect, do not answer that
Thank
question
you for
here.
not
Ask that
asking.
question.
Exactly.
You will get 7 million answers. from that one.
I've learned. Thank you very much.
But I appreciate you, President Hawkins. We do have a few minutes here. Any of my colleagues, was there anything you wanted to say or anything you wanted to ask President Hawkins? Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. Hello again, and welcome to the City Council work session. Thank you for coming. I can say in my tenure, I've not had any of the college presidents come and visit us when they understand how many of the students actually live and work and play in the city of Binghamton. So this is setting a precedent, and it shows your desire to collaborate and work to ensure not only the safety of your students in our respective districts, but so that we can prioritize and strategize to ensure we continuously attract learners and workers to our district and our city as a whole. And the faculty, of course, I keep forgetting, we want to, again, make Binghamton the place your faculty members desire to reside in. So I thank you for that. And we look forward to working with you on some programs and projects coming up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anyone else? Excellent. President Hawkins, any closing remarks, sir?
Once again, I'm very excited to be here. I actually have signed a lease, so I will actually be a resident of the city of Binghamton as well. So
Very nice.
it's
Who's your
a short
council
walk. Oh, I'm afraid to even answer that.
That might almost reach President Hawkins the speedy question. So we'll leave that one on the side for now.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, President Hawkins. I appreciate you. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, sir. With that being said, following the agenda down, at this time, I would like to introduce as a follow-up discussion our representatives from Napa. I want to thank them for taking the time to come down, as well as from our city purchasing department. I also want to thank Bernice for acting as a liaison here and working with both Napa and us to re-coordinate. Evening, Bernice. Evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, glad to be here.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. For what it's worth, obviously we know who Bernice is. If you could just really quickly just provide us with your first names, just so we know who we're addressing, please.
Sure. I'm Jace Full. I'm the president of Volo's Auto Supply, the
Thank you,
Napa
Jay.
distributor.
Thank you, Jason.
And this is Aaron Smith. He's vice
Jason and
president of the
Aaron,
company.
appreciate you both.
Sure.
And Bernice, thank you again so much. I'll offer either any of you or all of you a first few minutes. Wasn't sure if you want to have anything prepared opening that you wanted to provide, or I can just go right to the floor if colleagues have any questions.
We were just prepared to answer any questions you may have. We're very excited about the opportunity to work with the city. We supplied the city parts since we took over the stores in this area. And, so far, I think it's going pretty well. We had a lot of communication with the DPW and the people that serve it. We're very open-minded for suggestions, so just happy to be involved with it. And like I said, from our perspective, so far so good in terms of what an IDS is.
I appreciate that. And Jason and Aaron, just as a follow-up, I apologize. These mics work really, really good as long as you're about an inch away from them.
Gotcha.
It's not your fault, it's
Gotcha.
the microphone's fault. But I appreciate that introduction. And again, Bernice, thank you for acting as a liaison for all of this. So with that being said, I'll open it up to the floor. Councilman Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jason, when I talked to Commissioner Merkel a couple months ago, you guys were still doing inventory. Is that completed now of the parts that were there? You got here?
It is, yes.
Okay. What's, is the inventory going to be, it's going to be sold at some point? Is it? The obsolete things that are. needed
Well,
anymore?
so that's a great question. So a couple things with the inventory. It wasn't a traditional inventory in terms of how we inventory or the industry would inventory. Things were there by location code and not by product part number. So in terms of the obsoletes, one of the things that we try to do well with is get rid of obsolete when we can. And when we use the term obsolete, you have to think in two different terms. Obsolete meaning it's obsolete to the DPW's fleet, no longer of use, but holds value in the industry. And then there's complete obsolete. That means it is no use to the DPW and it's an obsolete number within the industry. And then you also have non-saleables. So in terms of selling down or getting rid of the obsolete, we really have no determination other than what the mechanics would tell us of what they would use and what they don't use. So I would say that over the next 6 months, we'll see what products aren't moving. And I would say after 6 months, whether it's a good item or not a good item, there's really no reason for it to be there. And we would probably attempt to do that. Our parts manager, Doug Miller, has already identified through the mechanics some obsolete product. And he's working with vendors currently to offset. So in other words, usually what the vendors will do is they'll offset against a purchase. So if a purchase is made, let's say it's for $500 and they're going to credit back $200 in the inventory, then we would in turn credit that back off of the invoice.
So have you encountered any problems or any pushback from city employees?
Not to
Since you've
my-
been here?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, good. All right, glad to hear that. Bernice, what's your relationship with these? I know it's early, but what you feel about Napa?
I think it's gone well so far. I've spoken to the mechanics, to get some of how they're feeling about it. They said the communication with Napa's good. They work really well with Doug. My opinion is that it's gone well so far. I think it's good for the city.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President. Hello, thank you for there today to answer all of our questions. So what has been the wait time, you say, for parts that are needed by?
Can you clarify, do you mean wait time in terms of something they order in the facility and we get it out to them? Or are you talking to things that need to be ordered outside of the facility?
So both would be used. I'm talking specifically, so I have written here from my notes from the first time we had this discussion that we were aiming for at least 80% stocked on demand. And I'm wondering how have you been able to meet that metric? And if not, if a part is not on demand, how on average would the mechanics have to wait for it?
So the goal to get to 80% is going to take a little bit of time, obviously, as we build the inventory and understand what's valid product, good product, and what isn't. In terms of the wait times, I don't know as if they would be any different than what we had before. One of the things that we've tried to clean up is that the shop opens at 6 a.m. and most of your vendors aren't open till 8 o'clock. And I think one of the things we experienced in the past, or has been experienced in the past, is that there'd be dead time in the morning. So, you wouldn't be able to order parts for those first 2 hours. And Doug Miller, who's our IBS manager, has been working really well, I think, with the mechanics to try to plan ahead of time so that they can be ordered the day before, the stuff that wouldn't be in stock. So, sure.
In relation to that too, Danny Merkel, who's the DPW commissioner, has started working towards getting a scheduled PM process with the mechanic supervisor so that we can get those vehicles that are supposed to be PM'd a week ahead of time to Doug so he can put the kit together of the parts that they're gonna need for that PM, so they don't have to wait on those.
Okay, thank you. I think, is this mic better? It seems better.
Yeah, I don't hear that one crackling like the other one.
Okay, great. So my next question is, I don't know that you might not be the right people to ask this question to, but the two previous storekeepers, I'm wondering, do they still work for the city, but in a different capacity?
Yes, both of them still work in DPW as MEOs right now.
MEOs?
Yeah, motor equipment operators, they're drivers.
Oh, thank you. And, has there been any purchasing of parts from third parties, or it's been exclusively through Napa?
Okay.
All right, can you hear me? All right, so right now so we started June 1st and that was our first month through the purchases through Napa. And we have my numbers here. Overall purchases were $31,000. Of those, Napa was about 6,500, representing about 20% of the parts sold to the city. The other was $24,000, representing about 80%. That was non-Napa, other vendors that we utilize. Also, the existing inventory on the shelves, the inventory that you've purchased, the city's purchased in the past, we really didn't have a value. There was no way to put a value on those individual numbers because, as Jace mentioned earlier, the part number in the system was actually a location code and not a part number. We did do the due diligence of going through and barcode system and getting that correct for our inventory purposes, but we invoiced 173 items at $0 that were already on the shelf, if that makes sense. The investment had already been made by the city. Month to date through the 21st of July, the sales to the city, the parts sales have been 25,497, 5,088 or 20% has been Napa, 20,409 has been through other vendors. And again, 107 items built out at $0 that investment had already been made by the city.
Okay, and you said it was about $6,000 in Napa parts, is that correct?
In June, 6,500.
6,500, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm wondering, one of the benefits that we were told is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could get parts essentially at cost or at a significant discount. I'm wondering if you have any numbers as to how much money of that $6,500 we have saved by purchasing through Napa at this significant discount.
So the way that the contract's structured is that whether it's a Napa part or it's an outside vendor, whatever our acquisition cost is, we mark it up 10%.
10%.
Okay. Typically in a normal sell position, that could vary from anywhere from 25% to 35% markup.
If I could expand on that, just so the Napa parts specifically, in the past, if you had purchased them from us, we could get reports on that, but they would be somewhere between a 25 to a 28% markup. You are purchasing at our cost, so that $6,500 represents our cost plus 10%. So the Napa parts alone, you're saving probably 15 to 20%.
Okay, so in theory, had we purchased these parts at full cost, we would have, trying to do math in my head quickly. It would have been
You would have
about 20% more expensive. Is that
correct?
okay?
The Napa.
Right, the Napa
The
part.
non-Napa vendors, the acquisition costs haven't really changed other than when we, negotiated better deals or gone to different entities, like if vendors sell the same part, we Doug will shop it around. I mean, it's not always just about cost savings. Obviously, there's time, efficiency, quality, all that stuff. But some of the bigger products and some of the bigger acquisitions, he will definitely shop around and look. And he knows from his knowledge of being in this business, some of the better values.
Mhm. So a part might be purchased because it's the cheapest or because it is readily available?
Well, I think it really depends on how he's being advised from the shop manager. How quick do they need it? What quality do they want to go with? I mean, the brake parts, for example, there are 8 different brake pads we carry, depending on, there's value line, there's fleet grade, there's industrial, there's coated, non-coated. I mean, he usually would, I don't want to speak for Doug, but he'll defer to what the shop manager wants. And then also how quick it is, if a piece of machinery is down, then we have to kind of go about it a little bit quicker. If it's an essential, if it's something that can wait, then, then obviously he would do his due diligence and try to do the best he can to get the best acquisition cost.
Okay. And I have one more question for now, and then I'll allow my colleagues to have the floor, the city council president will, of course. But, so you said that the scheduled PM process is kind of in the works. I know we were told about a specific computer program that would kind of automate or help with that process, like predicting what might be necessary. I'm wondering, is that completely online yet? And if not, do you have an estimated time as to when that?
I'm not sure what you mean by it. Are you?
What is
by
that
the-
computer
by-
program?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it.
Well, I'll just kind of elaborate first. So we do have our TAM system, which is our inventory management system. And what that will do over time, as time goes on and sales are made to the different departments, it'll suggest min maxes, stocking levels. Then will make our on time more efficient, right? Better, getting to that 80% mark. As far as in the shop goes, the city has their own shop management or shop fleet system that they use. Hopeful that we can bring those two together and integrate in the future. If that makes sense.
Okay, so it's not, you wouldn't say it's totally online yet, but
No,
you're
No,
working towards that.
it'll take time. It has to learn. There has to be history.
It goes by the purchases. So in other words, if you sell a filter and it's starting to see that you're selling on an average of 2 a week, then it'll suggest this is what you should stock more or less.
I see.
And then we
Okay, so
also
it has
have
to
the-
learn from
Your sales history, right?
your sales history. So the more sales we make, the more accurate it will
Correct.
be in theory. Okay. All right. Thank you. Those are all my questions for now.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion? Councilwoman Rowley.
Council President, good evening, everyone. How are you doing? So similar to my colleague, I do have a few questions, and thank you to Scanlon for starting off. So we did talk about the inventory and the buyback process. And when we initially talked about this back in February, we were to receive a summary report of the entire inventory and and I talked about this again with you, Bernice, at our last meeting, a summary report of the buyback and the total investment that would be given to the city by NAPA for the overhead that may be resellable and no longer used by the city. Is that the report that you just mentioned was complete and ready for presentation?
No, I mean, the obsolete, if you're referring to obsolete inventory, I just, Mr. Scanlon had asked pretty much
Just
the
a
same.
general inventory was complete.
Well, the
So that's-
general inventory they have, Bernice has, in terms of the buyback you're asking
Mhm.
about. That's the thing, it's gonna take some time. I mean, we have to decipher what's sellable, what isn't sellable, what is selling, what isn't selling. We would have no knowledge of that. In other words, if this were a widget, right, and it was on the city's inventory, we have no sales history from the city based on it. So now it's all that inventory has been inventoried through us with actual part numbers because there were no part numbers, there were no manufacturer part numbers. So that's here now. And then once we determine what's sellable and what isn't sellable, like what is moving through the parts department, and what isn't,
Mhm.
then we have a better determination. Some things it's very clearly labeled, like a mechanic will go to Doug and say, we no longer use these vehicles are they're out of service. We're not using these anymore. And then Doug has talked to some of the vendors about swapping them in and out. So it's a process. It's not a one, are you suggesting it's a one-time?
Well, what we were presented initially, and maybe they overly simplified the process, but what we were told was this inventory that you coined, the zero price, zero cost inventory, would no longer be under our auspices or part of our overhead. It would be purchased by Napa. We would receive the credit, and then we would be able to minimize the overhead associated with such.
Let me explain. So the way the process works, okay, first of all, the inventory that we had to work with. Again, there was no part numbers associated with it, so we kind of had to do an inventory from scratch. It was just location codes.
Okay.
It
Right,
was
which
very
you guys have
difficult,
shared.
right?
But you
So,
valued that,
yeah,
right?
no,
You-
we didn't have a right way to value it.
Okay.
We did not. But what we did do a full inventory and what we could have associate with a part number, we put that on inventory. Could you put a value to it? You could, but some of the stuff we have a part number, but we don't even know at this point what manufacturer it is. But let me answer the question. So our goal here is to do just what you're saying, to transfer your investment, the city's investment, into our dollars. And that's going to happen in a few ways. And it's not going to be 100%, because there are obsolete inventories. You can't do anything
We
with.
can't value
So
it.
we'll sell down what you have that will move, okay, at $0. Those parts will be invoiced to the city at $0. So as those SKUs or those parts come down, if we see those that we need to restock, then we will put our dollars back in on top of that. So our part, we own it. You divested of it. The stuff that's obsolete that we think that still has good value, we are going to do a couple of things with that. Either we're going to go to our Napa manufacturers and have them change that over to Napa parts
Mhm.
that now has a value.
Mhm.
We can take back and credit the city. Okay, if that makes sense. Or we're going to go to existing vendors and try to leverage that for the city's business. Like, hey, I have these international parts. You're an international dealer. We would like to keep you as a vendor. Can you help us return this? And we will, in good faith, buy more parts from you. So
Absolutely.
getting
So
your
this
credit.
scenario, the latter scenario you described
Yep.
was what was primarily discussed
Yes.
during our negotiation.
Yes. And-
And a timeline was presented that those conversations, that negotiation process
Mhm.
would ensue prior to the transition of such.
Right, but we finally signed an agreement. We didn't have an agreement with the city to go and have those discussions until just a week or so, 2 weeks before the opening of the IBS. So we are working on that. I would say, and I'm full transparency, I think that process happens over the first year of the IBS, working through that. And then the last bucket would be those parts that Jace mentioned earlier that there's really no value in them. We find that they're obsolete to the city, they're obsolete to the industry or the market.
Mhm.
And then the city's going to ultimately have to make a decision on what they want to do with those parts, such as either scrap them or maybe put them out to bid, like an auction or something. That will have to be a final decision.
Okay. And
That
I
is our
appreciate-
plan.
And I appreciate clarifying the timeline so that we're all on one accord in terms of when to expect such. So we won't
Yeah.
look to Bernice, do we have that price list? Because I asked you that last time, right? So that helps us and we can move forward then in our assessment of,
Sure.
of the goal achievement.
Yeah,
That's-
I mean,
that's
every
what-
day, our first goal is for Doug to get the parts to the techs, whether it's the parts that are already existing in the parts room or procuring them to keep them moving. Secondly is getting our arms around getting the parts room to where it can be productive and working on those stocking levels and working on that obsolete inventory.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. So just to clarify, our on-hand inventory is now in the RRTAM system for appropriate tracking by your team so that it is billed and we can see the usage over time.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in the contract, I know we talked about the cost plus 10% is in the contract for the Napa parts. There was a section about non-Napa services, and I just want to clarify, it's at 25% over gross profit. Is that for parts and other items, or is it solely for duties that cannot be fulfilled by Napa?
Everything that we expense or we purchase on behalf of the city and invoice to the city is a cost plus 10.
Okay, cost plus 10,
Yes.
even if you have to go out to AMCO, I'm making up, I think that's one of the others.
Anything that we invoice is at a cost plus
Okay,
10.
and it's based upon your relationship with the external vendor.
That or the pre-existing relationship with the
With the
city.
city.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, that helps. And then, of course, my technology is going to fail me because I had it on a separate page. Let's go back. Give me 1 second. In fact, maybe if anyone else has questions while I'm trying to find my.
No, that's fine. I do, thank you, Councilwoman. I want to be mindful of time here because we have hit the 6:30 mark, but Councilman Burns, did you have a question or two that you wanted to ask?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I was surprised that 80% are non-Napa, quite frankly. But if we are marking up, now, is it still the city employee that goes to pick up the parts? Do we have a runner that picks up the parts? Or,
Yes, so we had a parts runner that works out of the garage that was there before Napa took over, and he's staying in that same role as a parts runner and working.
Right.
He works for the city, but he does the parts running for
Right,
Napa
right.
now.
so
As with all vendors, I mean, there's a lot of deliveries being made too.
deliveries.
Yeah, I
right,
mean,
right.
that would be your first option. If you know they can get it there timely, you're not gonna tie up
Right,
one of your
sure.
people. You're gonna have them deliver it.
Sure. So, but before Napa, we wouldn't have any markup. We would just be buying it from those vendors without a markup. We would just, so we're paying more money now for those products than we were before.
In some cases, yes. In cases where we've negotiated better pricing, no. In the
Okay.
case of Napa, no. Again,
Right. I'm just thinking if it's 80% to 20%, I don't know if we're actually saving money in the end, but Bernice, can we look at it and say that we're actually from year to year, we're saving money?
Yeah, we can pull numbers and we can pull, total costs for months, but I think that we need some more time with Napa just
Okay.
to, because we've only been here not even 2 months yet.
Right,
So I think
right.
we need to get some history, but
Right.
we can pull that kind of
Right,
information.
right.
if we can address like, everybody talks about saving money on a particular part. I think Aaron can talk more on the backside, the soft cost savings, the efficiency. I mean,
Mhm.
you had an inventory that is not even managed, now you have a managed inventory.
Right.
You're gonna have an inventory that the city will not be audited on. So I think when we talk about that 10% markup, I mean, we're constantly looking at product lines too. Everybody talks about state contracts, wonderful. I could go buy, you can give me 5 items off state contract and I can find 4 vendors cheaper than you're getting on state contract right
Mhm.
now. It's just the reality of it.
Mhm.
So service, knowledge, the ability to acquire, these are all soft cost backside savings. We have 1 person in there now where you had 2 before.
Right.
So
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I get it, the 10% on some of the non-Napa stuff, but we're looking at bulk fluids right now. We're looking at tires, we're looking at everything.
Right.
And it's not that we're in the same thing. We may be able to purchase tires from someone 3% less and it might be a big win-win. Well, if the service isn't there, if the quality isn't there, if the warranty support isn't there, then that 3% really isn't a win-win at all.
Right.
And then the ability to track returns and defects. I mean, I think that was a big concern. They didn't even know if they're getting credit back on cores. So if you essentially saved $20 on a starter, never sent the core back and lost $65 on the core, what did you save?
Right. Right. Thank you.
Sure.
And then Bernice what about what do you hear from our DPW commissioner and everybody? Are they think things going well?
Yeah, everything I've heard from internal has been positive. I know Danny's been happy with it. Unfortunately, he's on vacation.
Right.
Fortunate for him, but
Right.
so he couldn't be here to speak today, but I know that he's happy with the way things are going also.
Okay. All right. Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Riley, did you want to, I think you were looking for another question. Go ahead, please.
You again, guys, again, I rely on technology heavily. I'm trying to go away from paper. But I did have a question. We talked about before, the winters here are horrible. And your employees are set for a certain period of time. We talked about adjusting for the downtime in the morning. What is the plan for coverage during the winter and for emergencies?
So so the contract is set up for 2 employees. Right now, we have 1 employee, Doug Miller, but we also backfill it with one of our employees through a couple employees. And actually, and I do want to bring this up, that has been at no charge to the city. We have not, because we haven't had a permanent person in that second role. When the city goes to their split shift in November, I think it's December 1st, Bernice, Sunday after Thanksgiving, then that second employee will go from the regular hours to the winter hours. It's also in the contract that if there are emergency situations, that we will cover the parts room, which we're ready to do.
With the additional staff.
Correct. Between Doug and that other counterpart.
Okay, and I see you keep pointing back. Is that Doug? Hello, Doug. But they didn't introduce the people in the audience, so
Sorry.
no worries. That's Doug, and who else is with Doug?
That's his bodyguard, Joel.
Oh, okay. So that's not our second team
No.
member.
So the first gentleman is Doug Miller. He's the IBS manager. And then the gentleman to
Welcome.
his right is Joel Myers. He's our operations manager for all of our locations.
Okay,
And I can't even tell you how many hours he spent there because we want to make this right. Make it work.
absolutely. So in some of those negotiations, again, and we appreciate doing what you can to ensure we start off right, for lack of a better term. My question, again, going back to, not having the 2 people in place right now and not overutilizing the runners that we talked about. If they're booked and you have someone at your shop, one of the local Napa shops, they will drive it over. Are we being charged for that?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. All right. And that concludes my question.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilwoman. Really quickly, just to wrap up here, I don't want to extend this another 2 or 3 minutes. I was wondering if you could maybe provide some qualitative points with respect to what your experiences have been with other municipalities, DPWs, police departments, fire departments in relation to similar contracts that you have set up here with the city of Binghamton. If you could just speak to, things that worked out well, things that maybe did not work out well, things like that.
So Napa, we're independently owned, and then there's corporate Napa.
Right.
And Napa has this program IBS, which we are supported through. This is, it's technically our second IBS we have ran. Napa has several. They've got the New York City Police Department. They got Chicago, the city of Houston. There's several of our colleagues that have large construction companies. So what we have found where it doesn't work is lower volume, where it's not really called for, like a municipality or a shop that's purchasing, say, less than $20,000 a month, because the back end cost savings don't justify it. Where the value is, or where it works, is that this is what we do. Right. So, if you were a doctor, or if Ms. Riley were a tax accountant, that's what she specializes in. We wouldn't want a tax accountant, I wouldn't want somebody not qualified to do that. This is all we do.
Right.
We procure parts. We're very good at it. We're very efficient at it. We have a whole network, as I said before. Our goal, I would love to sell everything through Napa, but that's really not our goal. Our goal is to provide the best support we can to the city. It's got to be profitable for us, obviously, or else we wouldn't do it. However, we also take pride. We're independently owned. So we don't want to see this thing go bad. We want it to be successful. That's why we pull the manager from an excuse me, from an existing store to do this, because we want to put the best qualified person in our mind in that position. So I think if I know Dan has reached out to other municipalities and got feedback from them about what works and what doesn't work. And I think the biggest thing, without getting too specific, is that this is what we do. This is what we're trained in. He's ASC parts specialist certified. I mean, this is what we do day in and day out.
Gotcha. You've also been a supplier to us in the past.
Correct.
From a parts perspective. So this isn't obviously scale of the relationship now has increased, but by definition, you aren't a foreign entity to us. We've worked with you before,
Correct.
even on the supply side. of
Right.
things,
I was
rather.
actually, it's listed, the vendor's listed as Triple City Parts, who we purchased the Napa from,
Right.
and we're still listed as Triple City Parts. in there. So it follows all supply, but yeah, we've been.
May
Yeah,
of
we've been in this
2011,
position May
yeah.
of 2011.
Sure.
And yeah, I think in that time, we've been one of the top 5 vendors that the city's purchased from.
And actually, that was the next question I was going to ask. So I appreciate that. So it's not obviously, again, the scale has changed, but it's not a new relationship.
No, I mean,
We've worked-
we deal with the city of Cortland, we deal with Utica DPW, we
Sure.
deal, a lot of municipalities, Endicott. We had state contract at one point. We had 2 zones that we were awarded the state contract. That's a whole nother discussion, but
Sure.
this is all stuff we're very familiar with.
No, I appreciate that. Just 2 points that I wanted to make out of all the good questions and discussions. So as we're moving to the point, I'm hearing a lot of things about markups and markdowns and percentages one way and one way another. So we have to remember a couple things, just mathematically speaking, right? So number one, if we purchase a part contractually through Napa and that price is X plus 10%, if there is a competing part somewhere else that is 10 or 20% in the different direction, that doesn't necessarily in and of itself mean that the values are correlated, right? Because there's wholesale price, there's commercial price, there's retail price, right? So there's different aspects to that we have to take into account. The second thing as well, with respect to kind of the reviews that you were talking about of year-over-year prices, it's important to keep in mind. So let's use a simplistic example. If this year a spark plug costs $1.25, and last year it cost $1.15, even though price in year T is 10 cents more than price in year T minus 1. That doesn't mean that that's the result of the contractual relationship, right? Because there are 7,000,003 different variables that Napa nor the city of Binghamton have no control over, least of which is inflation, right? So we need to be very cognizant that when we're looking at year-over-year prices, we need to take into account that there are many external factors that might be a reason why a price is higher in one year versus something comparable in years past. So again, just from a numbers perspective, it's important to remember that, right? So, Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. I just have one more question, again, being cognizant of time here. So one of the concerns that was brought up initially was the lack or non-ideal oversight structure that, we were told that mechanics just come in and take what they want, and that was, an issue. And I was wondering if you could outline kind of the accountability or the oversight structure of how this works and how we can ensure that there's
Yes.
some type of.
I'll give let me just some bullet points I think might help. Right. So first of all, the parts room per se is locked down. Doug is the only one, or Joel or Volo's team that's really allowed in the parts room, so that we're the only ones touching the parts. Secondly, we track the purchases or the sales two ways. Number one, the vehicle or equipment unit number is used as the PO in the PO field. So at any point in time, we can reference where the parts went. And the other thing that we do is every technician has been given like a technician number that is also associated with that invoice. So we can track where the parts, what technician requested the parts and what vehicle those parts were costed out to. Is that kind of answering your question?
Yes, thank you.
Just not to drag this on, but even to elaborate one step further, the other thing that I think is helpful that we bring to the table, the PO, the vehicle is in the PO. So I don't know historically if their shop management tool allowed them to do this, but looking at brakes, for example, all different kinds of brakes, how quick did they wear out? We can actually track a vehicle now so that the shop manager can go back to Doug and say, geez, we just put brakes on this vehicle 4 months ago. And then they can look at how many miles were on the vehicle and then make a determination, A, warranty, B, is it the right product we're putting on there? Sometimes you may have to spend more money, put better product to get, better stopping distances, that type of thing. Tracking defects, tracking cores and all that stuff. So it's, I think it'll be really beneficial to the city once you really get rolling so that you can track stuff more efficiently.
And again, all of those are attached to the PO from the purchased, right? So if it's
Correct.
purchased, it's consumed.
Correct. And
There it
readily
is.
available if anyone requests any of that information.
Is lean inventory here the long goal?
I think the right inventory. How about that? Yeah, I can't really define that. I mean,
Well, so
the
lean,
inventory should
lean
be on us.
Yeah.
So lean, well, I will tell you lean in terms of if you use 4 oil filters in a year, I don't think you need 6 on the
that's lean, right?
right.
Being able to correctly estimate what it
Yes.
is you're using
Yes.
and what you will predictively need, so you're not overstocking.
Right. When there's not oversight with vendors, it's easy for them to come in
Right.
and sell you cases of stuff that you don't need.
Right, because we're buying, which will dollar to dollar.
Well, once the inventory completely shifts to us, you have no investment in it.
Exactly,
So you don't care if we put 5 million in there.
right,
It's like-
We don't buy until we use and you do a
Hun-
month.
exactly,
right,
exactly,
exactly.
exactly. But on the reverse, we can't be so lean to Councilwoman Riley's point. Can't be so lean that it affects service.
Sure,
Those get-
exactly, yeah,
Those people need the parts. You gotta have,
absolutely, 100%, 100%. Excellent. Well, Bernice, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate the follow-up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions. At this time, I to ask Captain Bidwell to join us. Cap, how are
Hello, everybody.
you, sir? Cap, review 50, 115 and 157.
Yes.
All right,
I'll
thank
do-
you, Cap.
I'll do them
Floor
all.
is you. No, gentleman and a scholar, the floor is yours.
158 is going to be a give grant through DCJS. The grant is going to be for $426,112. This grant is for salary, fringe benefits, and overtime funding for the department.
Discussion? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Skirnji. Hi, Captain Bidwell. How
Hello.
are you?
Good.
I am wondering why you are asking for this to be expedited.
The grant goes into effect July 1st, so we could reimburse the city.
Okay, and this is the same, okay, sorry, I'm skipping ahead, so never mind. That's my question. Thank you.
Yes.
No problem. Cap. 159, please.
159 is a $70,000 grant from DCJS. This is for anything body camera related.
Discussion. Councilwoman. Freeman.
Thank you, President Skirnji. Have there been, or what, what specifically is this going toward? Have there been cameras that have been breaking or need to
This,
be replaced?
this came about, DCJS actually, it was a Tuesday afternoon, they called and said, hey, we have $70,000 that your department can use to replace broken cameras, new docking stations, anything related to the body cam. Do you want the money?
Okay,
So I said, sure.
yeah, yeah. And do you have any? This is kind of a large question, but do you have any data when it comes to the effectiveness of the body worn cameras in terms of, let's say, crime reduction or amounts of complaints lodged against the department or anything to show that they are effective in doing what they purport to do?
I do not. That would probably be a question for internal affairs and Captain Sutliff. That would
Okay,
probably be more her area.
okay,
This just happens. This is just from relationships that we have with DCJS. So when they have extra money, they give us a call sometimes.
okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you. Cap 157, please.
157 is to increase our senior crime analyst her salary to $84,000. This is paid out of the GIVE grant that DCJS gives us. So it's 100% covered. Yes,
And Cap, really quickly, just 158 and 157, you're requesting them to be expedited. Was there a particular reason on those two?
So-
Or
the GIVE grant runs from July 1st to July 1st.
okay,
So that's why.
so it's deadline related.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My apologies, Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. Hello again.
How are you?
I was about to call you Councilman. Bidwell. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So we did talk about the GIVE grant, and we know we have seen this annually during our tenure here on council. My question for you, similar to, well, I'll start with this. If we're increasing the salary of an employee for 1 year, based upon a 1-year grant, you're only asking for the 11,000 for this year. And then she will be rolled into, well, I don't want to use pronouns, the position will be rolled into the budget at this rate moving forward.
Correct. So this grant is, this is our 10th year. So the way it's this, because we have a center, we have one of the 11 crime analyst centers. So we'll always be funded. But I actually think Mallory's, her position is going to end up going to the state.
Okay. Okay. So again, we're covering the position and the increase this year based upon the legislation that's before us.
Correct.
Okay, and then similar to Council Member Freeman, we do see RISE grant. And remember, 1 year we had something about, we asked about this, we were on Zoom and
Yes.
you all said something about tutus. Remember, you said, oh, we buy little things like tutus to help with the children at the, what was that? At the Boys and Girls Club. And we talked about how those,
So we've definitely, I've written other grants for the Boys and Girls Club for things like, for dance. So to provide outfits. The last grant I wrote for them was for outfits. It was for a new van for any extracurricular activities that they were doing. I think a coach.
this last one was tied to crime reduction. It was.
We didn't get that grant though.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure it was not the,
It wasn't the GIVE grant. That was
The
a JAG burn grant through the federal government.
okay. Thank you for clarifying. But
Yes.
from the Give 10, since we just discussed our annual receipt and the calls from DCJ, which means if they're calling us, we must be doing something,
They like-
right?
Yeah.
So is there data associated with crime reduction initiatives and their success in the city?
So DCJS does do all the numbers. I'm sure on their website or their numbers people would have all the numbers, all our part one crime, year to date.
But they get it from us.
We report the numbers to them and then they do whatever they do
Right.
with it. Yes.
So from your report,
Yeah, well, not mine. I definitely don't do it.
well, who?
Somebody does it.
Okay, so there's a report somewhere that city council doesn't have, but can we have access to
So
that?
it's not so much a report, and this is how I believe the data is transferred to DCJS. So part one crimes is tracked through, I think, records. So I don't know if it's a weekly, monthly, So all our information in through our RMS system. So if there's a call for service for an assault, so if it's a monthly basis, they might query how many assaults were in the city. They send that data to DCJS,
Got it.
but that would be through records, not through us.
Okay, records. And our records is part of the RMS that you just,
Records does all our reports.
and RMS is the reporting system.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now tell me this, just for our listening audience, they look, look at the people are wanting to know more about the data. What is a part one crime?
Part one crimes are going to be your serious crimes, your burglaries, your robberies, rapes, murders, that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion? Cap, thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir. Thank you,
Appreciate you.
everybody.
This time I'd like to ask Sarah Gloss to join us from the mayor's office. Evening, Sarah. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to join. Thank you for joining us. 160, floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, so this is a resolution authorizing the city to jointly apply with Broome County for a Brownfield Opportunity Area Grant from the New York State Department of State in the amount of, it says $300,000 here. I did get an updated number today, which I provided to Janine. It's $448,200. That's what will be reflected in the resolution for pre-development activities in the Brandywine BOA. The city brought forward its own resolution a few weeks ago for a BOA grant. This is the county's application. We submitted a question to the Department of State asking if we were required to have a city resolution in addition to the county resolution, even though the city is not spending any money or providing any in-kind support. And they did let us know that we needed one, but not until July 11th. So that's why I'm asking to expedite this. It's purely just showing that the city's on board with the county applying for this. We did use Department of State's recommended resolution. I made a few tweaks to identify that we're a co-applicant and to ensure that it does not put us in any financial obligation to this project, but that's why it's expedited and that's why you're seeing another BOA grant. It's the counties and the state told us that the city also needed a resolution to support this.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. Really quick, Madam Clerk, were we able to get that update, that updated number on the RL? Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council discussion. Seeing none, Sarah, 166, please.
So this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Rieger Marketing Communications to provide support services to local businesses related to job marketing, talent attraction, and ancillary business support services. So the city was awarded Community Development Block Grant CARES Act money. That's the COVID CDBG money that we were awarded. There was a certain carve out for business support, but it's very, very narrow what we're allowed to do with it. One of the main ways that it was used during the height of the pandemic was to support businesses who were purchasing equipment or doing renovations that were required to protect their employees and the public from the COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen a pretty precipitous drop off in folks that are still doing work that's considered eligible. The state actually has a tax credit program out right now that does the same thing, and they're consistently advertising for it because they're not getting very many bites. It's just hard to prove that any investments that are being made in the last year or so were directly as a result of the pandemic. And a lot of folks used other funding that they had available during that time to fund some of those improvements. So we were trying to figure out what might be the best way to do this, did a lot of research into how other communities were using this specific business assistance money, and realized that in a broad sense, marketing could be an eligible use. We've heard a lot from local businesses that they've had trouble filling jobs. And so we thought this might be a good way to address an immediate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is our current labor market, as well as to support especially our small businesses. The real market for this is we have about a little over $100,000 allocated, and we're looking to do $2,000 to $5,000 spends per business. So essentially the businesses would engage, we would hold the contract on behalf of the businesses. We would look for small businesses that don't have marketing assistants, don't have marketing staff on, who might be able to use a little bit of money just to get them over the edge and putting job advertising out, whether that's on Facebook or Indeed or LinkedIn. And really this is not a broad talent attraction initiative. It's a very targeted hi, I own a bakery, I need someone to work the front desk, and I don't have time, energy, or resources to go out and do a full, countywide search for one employee who may or may not be a good fit for our organization. So just giving them access to a high quality marketing firm that they may not otherwise be able to have access to, because we're guaranteeing, that $100,000 to the company, and these smaller businesses in the city get access to those services.
Excellent.
So that's where that's coming from.
Thank you very much. Council discussion. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Spengi. Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I see, let's see, on page 11, it says the total amount not to exceed $107,143. Is that the total of the business support pot of funding from
Yes.
the,
Yes,
okay,
the
so this is like
understanding
the
is
entirety.
it's everything. I believe we may have collapsed. I think it came in separate years, and I apologize. Steve Carson is better suited to answer this one than me. So I can certainly get that information from him. But I think we collapsed all of the money we had left into one pot. But this is the remaining of that CDBG CARES money that's specifically allocated to business assistance.
Okay, and so if, let's say, we don't use all of this, is there a timeline for this pot of money to be used up?
There is, I don't know it off the top of my head, so I apologize, but that was one of the reasons I believe they wanted us to spend it by the end of this year. My understanding is we'll be asking for an extension on these funds. But one of the reasons we tried to turn this around pretty quickly, and we only started having these conversations 6-8 weeks ago, and went through the procurement process, was because there is a timeliness factor to it that we're pretty sure we can get extended, but it's not 100% guaranteed.
Okay, so if we don't use up these funds in the allotted time, they might, and let's say if we don't get the extension, they might go back to the drawing board and we can use them for something else.
Yes,
Within that.
right, yes, or I think they might go back to the federal government if we don't meet the timeliness requirement. So just depending on if we get the extension and still don't use the funds, I think we'd have to go back to the drawing board on it. But if we don't get the extension, or we use the funds within the extended timeline, then we would not have any additional funds.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Riley.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. So just to clarify, we would be contracting with Rigor, who's a local marketing agency,
Mhm.
on behalf, in effort to help the city of Binghamton businesses only.
Correct.
So we will be, someone will be serving as the liaison
Mhm.
to develop individual marketing packages for every business that seeks this assistance.
Correct. So Rieger will be doing the actual engagement. So they'll be developing the marketing plans directly with Rieger.
Okay.
The liaison from the city would serve as the connection point between the business and Rieger to your point, validate that they're a city of Binghamton business, and any other things
Perfect.
we would need to validate.
And
as
do
part
we
of this.
have a rubric of such or qualifications to determine who meets the criteria?
We do
for?
not at this point, though it is something that we'll be looking to develop in concert with Rieger. One of the things I always like to say is that I don't know what I don't know. And certainly I am not an expert on advertising for businesses. So in our conversations with Rieger, once we're able to formally engage with them after this is approved, we'd like to have that conversation on, how do we determine what the needs of a business are? How do we determine whether a business fits into what we wanted this fund to be, and really flesh out that vision with them and ensure that they know what the city of Binghamton's expectations are on this.
Absolutely. So they have not set a number. We will only work with 50 based upon this cost.
No, I mean, we imagine that if we're looking at between 2,000 and 5,000, which is my best guess on what these contracts will be, although could be lower, could be higher. That's something that I'm hoping that Rieger can shed some light on. It'll be, 107 divided by whatever that amount is. So we're looking somewhere between 15 and 25 businesses would be my guess on where we land on this.
Okay. Now, will you come back to council once this is further along, if approved,
Mhm.
once it's further along? Because I'm concerned about us. I mean, again, we want to support all the businesses in Binghamton, but in terms of equitable access, equitable support, we have newer businesses, as you know,
Mhm.
that may need a greater hand
Mhm.
than some of our existing businesses, but the existing businesses know how to procure the support based upon the criteria that's developed. So I just want to make sure we're looking at it holistically.
Mhm.
And when we present a report of those that have been assisted by this fund,
Mhm.
we see mom and pops that were started during COVID in equal numbers as our long, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll do an all call. Essentially, I have a list of contacts for businesses in the city of Binghamton, and we have a form through which we collect information on any businesses that may want to get in our distribution list. We'll use our social media. We'll reach out to our partners in entrepreneurship, the Employee Assistance Program through BCC, Support Black Business 607 Accelerator, through the incubator itself, to try to tap into those entrepreneurial networks that help us get the word out about any programs that we have.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. I think it sounds like a good program based upon what we have thus far. But we know, again, some things happen over time, and we just
Yeah.
want to make sure everyone is invited to the table.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion? Sarah, forgive me, are you presenting
I am
on
doing Dr. Berling's as well.
23-161 as well? Thank you very much. Floor is yours.
So this is the acceptance of a Broome County Creating Healthy Schools and Community Award. So you might have heard me bring something similar to this a few months ago. That was for the 2022-2023 contract. This is a two-year program, but it has two separate year-long contracts. This is the 2023-2024 contract. The reason that we brought the other program forward for Expedite was that we came into that program late and we had to spend the $5,000 that were allocated very quickly. We have submitted all of those expenses to Broome County and are awaiting reimbursement on that. So this is the next phase of that grant. So they have authorized $20,000 to come to us it says here, complete street policy, develop complete street policy action plan and complete street projects. The complete street projects will be developed in coordination with the Broome County Health Department to make sure that they align with the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities guidelines. Our goal is to use this money to support safe pathways to schools. Specifically, we've been looking at MacArthur Park and trying to price out what the infrastructure and sidewalk markings might need to be there, because we have frequent complaints about just the volume of students who are crossing the street. It's kind of a complicated entrance exit there. So that's one area we'll be looking at. But generally speaking, our engineering, parks, DPW department will be advising on how best to spend this money over the next year. The reason it's being expedited is because as part of this, we just held a complete street program that I believe Dr. Berling invited all of you to. And that needs to come out of this fund. So just in order to expedite us being able to pay them for that money, that's why the expedite is here.
Thank you, Sarah. Discussion. Seeing none. Sarah, thank you very much. Appreciate you. This time I'd like to ask Billy Goodson from the sewage treatment plant to join us. Evening, Billy. How are you?
Good.
Great to see you.
You too.
Floor is yours, ma'am.
My
You can
first
just go right down
request-
156 if you want to start off with that. That's fine. Unless you had a particular order of things that you wanted to address.
No, I can start with 156.
Sure.
The other four that I'm probably going to reorganize.
Sure, absolutely.
Um,
Please.
156 is a request. We received another check for FEMA. For $16,933.75. I just realized that it's all going to contingency, so it's not really necessary to expedite it. I did request it to be expedited initially, but
Okay,
it's not going to the owner, so
so I'll pull that off. I'll pull
Yeah.
that off the
Yeah.
expedition list. Thank you.
um,
And then again, just for the record, we've got RLs 162, 163, 164, and 165. So for the remainder of this portion, I'm going to give Billy the latitude to select the order she wants to. So
Okay.
please go ahead.
all right, yes, all four of these are related to the IMG grant for the TPS project at the plant. I'm going to start with RL 23-165 requesting It's a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a project-specific intermunicipal agreement in relation to the financing and construction of the TPS project.
Discussion?
What-
Councilman Burns.
Billy, what is the CPS project?
The TPS is Terminal Pumping Station Project. The process that we have now, could be improved by changing the system. And, we're in the process of getting the engineering report right now to make that happen. So, the grant would allow us to, redesign and do the construction for the TPS station.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. Hi, Billy. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Can you explain to us why you're asking for this piece to be expedited?
Because we need these four things to get approval through both owners' legislative bodies in order to put the grant in for the IMG grant. It's due August 11th.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Billy, please.
RL 23-164 requesting that we designate the city of Binghamton as the lead municipality regarding the CPS project.
Thank you, Billy. Discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Councilwoman Freeman, my apologies.
Thank you, President Scringy. So if I'm correct, which I may or may not be, happens sometimes, but we don't usually pass separate legislation to designate the city as the lead municipality. Is that correct?
We do need it for the grant. We need to let them know which municipality will be handling the procurement and funding.
Okay, so what are the implications of being the lead municipality for this?
They will be primarily responsible for the project. It'll be similar to the construction project at the plant, the large one. They will be handling the entire process.
Okay, and then we just need buy-in from the other entities. Right, buy-in meaning just
From Village of
approval.
Johnson City.
Yeah,
Yes, they've already approved all of these.
okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anything else? Billy, please.
Number 3 is RL 23-163 to approve the funding for the TPS project. The estimated amount right now is $4.2 million that will be taken from the fund balance. There will not be any bond on this project.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Oh. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. I'm wondering, is there a specific budget line to take money from the fund balance?
Not at this time.
Okay,
It will be created once the project is underway.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
One more. RL 23-162 designates the city of Binghamton as the lead agency to submit the NYSHPO CRIS application for the TPS project that's associated with the IMG grant.
Thank you. Discussion. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scringy. Sorry, I'm just like organizing my thoughts here, but so this is 162 would be separate from us being the lead agency. This is,
Well, we had to designate the lead agency in order to do this RL to submit the application for the
Okay,
Mansion
so,
Vote.
right, so this is not, I guess, implicit in being the lead agency. We have to specifically pass other legislation for.
Correct.
I see. Ed Crum nodding his head vigorously in the, in the crowd. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Councilwoman. Billy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there some sort of legal requirement that requires one municipality versus the other to vote in some sort of chronological order? Like, do we have to vote first, or does that matter as long within some set date range of X to Y that all the stakeholders have voted in the affirmative or whatever it might be?
I do not know the answer to that. Do you know, Ed?
All right. Okay. I'll summarize. Thank you, Ed, very much. There's nothing in the intermunicipal agreement that requires that. Thank you, Ed. Appreciate that. That's what I thought was the case, but just wanted to double check.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, Billy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Billy, my deepest apologies. And you don't have to run back because I'll summarize it on the record. So the 4 that need to be expedited, is there a time delineation? Because there's quite a chunk here and I'm concerned about the overtasking of time on the clerk's office to get all of these ready for Wednesday. Is there latitude with that, considering I think the date wasn't it 11 August, I think it was? Right, but I'm saying, is there? We do have another meeting, yes, that's why I'm saying a little, if there is latitude on this, considering that we know JC has already voted in the affirmative, I believe. You would still get it if it was by the deadline you need it for, if it wasn't expedited. That's why I wanted to check. Right. Correct. So the 24th, our next meeting is, you would actually have this by the 9th. You would have this 2 days prior. Say it again. Okay. How much time does the sewage board and sewage treatment plant need with respect to moving it forward once it's received? Right. Because I have concerns from the clerk's office of them being able to get all of this expedited in 2 days, because it's a lot. Just looking through it materially. It's nobody's fault. It's the way the count. I'm trying to find some fluidity here as it relates to this. Like, can you give me a dead stop date of what you need this by? Like, even if we have to set up a special business meeting, I'm willing to do that. I just, obviously in conjunction with my colleagues here, but So if you need it by 11 August, if that's the deadline, what's the date you need it by? Say it again. This Friday? Okay, if it's okay, Billy, can I ask a small favor? Is there any way you could leave the clerk's office a direct telephone number for you? Maybe I can take this, maybe we can take this conversation offline and then just up in the back. And then I'll reach out to you directly from my number. I'll coordinate with the, with my colleagues in the mayor's office and see what we can find out, because they just, there's a lot expedited this week and it's putting a lot on because for a 24-hour notice to the public, the clerk's office doesn't have a lot of turnaround time on this. So, and obviously we all want to make sure it's done correctly. So, yeah, if you can maybe give them your card, I'll call you first thing tomorrow morning. Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. Colleagues, I'll follow up with you regarding that. Councilwoman.
I also wonder maybe if a possible, so I'm just throwing this out there. There are some pieces of legislation that are expedited just because they want to get the ball rolling.
Right.
Or like get someone paid as soon as possible without a hard stop deadline. And I
Yeah.
wonder if maybe we could unexpedite those.
Yeah.
Whereas this has a hard deadline.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's exactly what I was thinking of. Like maybe if the starting of the application is only tied to one RL, maybe we just expedite that one and then we don't have to do the others or something like it. But I agree.
Or I was thinking like, let me see. There was one maybe from, I'm trying to think, and I don't want to make it so that people
No,
have
that's
to wait.
why
for
don't we
things,
talk about it
but-
offline after the meeting? But
Okay.
I'm totally with you in the spirit of what you're saying. Absolutely.
Right, like some, yeah, whatever, we could talk about it.
Yeah,
offline.
sure. No
Okay.
problem. Anything else? Okay, lastly, really quickly, on behalf of Chairman Strawn, so I know a number of us were here. The Employees Committee met and voted unanimously to put forward to the broader body, as is required by us, right? So the city clerk's office obviously falls under our purview, budget wise. And so, the Employees Committee unanimously voted to bring forward to the body to communicate, obviously, to the mayor's office for budgetary purposes, a 2% increase for the next year and a 1% salary adjustment regarding responsibility adjustment. I apologize. So I just wanted to communicate that forward. Was there anything that wanted to get on the record about that? Okay, seeing none, we good to go. Madam Clerk, thing from the clerk's office. Sounds good. Thank you all for being here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion by Councilwoman Freeman,